Nope.
Anthony and Peter sat with their grandpa in the food court of the mall, enjoying their hamburgers and milkshakes. Their eyes scanned the crowd that moved quickly around them. Pointing and giggling, they spotted different people who piqued their interest, asking their grandpa of his opinion as they spewed their grade school commentary. Peter spotted two mall-goers on the other side of the food court. Standing in front of the new shawarma joint, the couple scanned the menu, deciding what to order, hand in hand. Peter watched them for a while. At first, nothing seemed off about the two. They seemed like an average elderly couple. Clearly, they were in love and refused to let go of each other's hands. They ordered their food, paid, waited, walked to their table, and took their seats, all without losing grip of each other. As the old man began to dig into his kebabs, the woman simply gazed at him. It was almost as if she was studying his movements in awe and wonder. Peter smiled at the sight of the sweet old couple. Just then, a man on his cell phone walked past them, not aware of his surroundings. He bumped violently into the table, causing the man's cup of steaming hot tea to spill onto the hand that held his lover. Out of reaction, the man quickly jerked his hand away, releasing the palm of his woman. The man on the cell phone apologized profusely to the elderly man, offering him handfuls of napkins and dabbing the mess on the table. As all this commotion was taking place, Peter and Anthony noticed the old woman beginning to shake and look around wildly. Shaking turned into grunting, and grunting into screaming. It wasn't long until she had jumped onto the table in a single leap, roaring ferociously to the sky. Then, with a single swipe, the woman slammed the man with the cell phone, causing him to fly backwards into a wall. The elderly man wiped off his burned hand and quickly grabbed the empty palm of his woman. Instantly, her calm demeanor returned.
Grandpa Costa,
Peeped little Peter as he tugged on his grandfather's sleeve.
why did that lady go crazy like that?
Grandpa Costa was in shock. He knew what he had seen but refused to accept it as reality. He squinted and looked closer at the elderly man before whispering under his breath, "Oh God, can it be? Tom?"
Who's Tom?
exclaimed little Anthony as he got out of his chair and began spinning around in circles to make himself dizzy. Costa turned his attention back to his boys. He took a second to adjust himself and sit Anthony back in his seat. "Boys," Costa began, "I have to tell you a story about those two." His grandchildren gave him their full attention as he began to unfold the mystery of what they had just witnessed. "About 50 years ago, when I was in my 20s, I had a close friend named Tom. He was Greek like us, and together we were two of the strongest Greek boys in town. One day, another one of our friends, Dan, suggested we go camping for the weekend. Because we were strong Greek boys, we figured a few days in the woods would be a great time, and we agreed to join him. Dan knew a place that he said would be perfect. A nice clearing for our tents, a river to swim in, and there was even a fitness center nearby where we can lift and become even stronger Greek boys. The three of us got our gear together and we made our way to the campsite. Things were great for the first couple days and we had no problems until that last night."
What happened on that last night, Grandpa?
asked Peter, munching on a Snickers bar. "What happened next changed everything. We had been drinking, and Dan told us he had to go pee, so he made his way to the trees near the tent. He was singing the entire time he walked, loud enough for us to hear him, but then the singing stopped. I looked at Tom and asked what we should do.
We should go find him, Malaka,
replied Tom as he rose to his feet. I suggested we bring our knives or something to defend ourselves with, but Tom assured me that we didn't need them.
Come on, Malaka, we don't need those. We are strong Greek boys, remember, Chieftis?
That's all I needed to hear. I got on my feet beside him, and we made our way into the trees in the direction we saw Dan going. It wasn't a long time until we found Dan's boots and shreds of his clothes covered in blood. The blood didn't just cover his clothes, it covered the ground and the trees and everything. But Tom and I were not scared. It would take more than blood to scare a couple of strong Greek boys. So we began to call out for Dan. We called his name about 10 minutes before
I heard something rustling around the bushes next to us. I called Tom over and I told him what I heard. We shouted at Dan to come out of the bush and that it was not funny. It got quiet. The rustling stopped. Then something happened. Tom and I both got scared. We were so ashamed. We were supposed to be strong Greek boys, but we were scared like womans or something. But we were right to be scared. Dan was not the one in that bush.
Little Anthony stared wide-eyed at his grandpa on the brink of tears.
If it wasn't Dan, then what was making the sound in that bush?
Grandpa Costa leaned into the small children, and with one exasperated breath, he stated,
The Maerbear.
Anthony and Peter gasped loudly and began to whimper. Through the fear, Peter managed to ask,
But isn't the Maerbear just an old Greek legend?
Costa grabbed a napkin to wipe the sweat from his brow.
That's what we thought, Dyke. But then she charged at us out of the bushes. And she came straight at me. I was so scared I just froze up. I saw the beast raise up her giant claw to the air, ready to strike me dead like it did to Dan. But I was saved. Tom came from behind me, and he grabbed the Maerbear's claw and mid-swipe. The second he grabbed her hand, she stopped roaring and froze still. She turned her head to examine the hand of my savior. Then, before her eyes, she began to change. She was no longer a bear. She became a young woman about our age. Smiling, she grabbed and hugged Tom and began to speak. I have been a bear for over 1,000 years. I have been waiting for a strong Greek boy like you to take my hand, and you've finally done it, she exclaimed joyfully. Tom, still in shock, muttered back, Does that mean the curse is broken? Her eyes became sad as she stared to the ground. I'm afraid the curse can never be broken. As long as you're holding my hand, I'm free from the curse power, but if you ever let go, I will once again take form of a beast and lose control of my mind. Tom looked at me, searching for an answer, but I did not have one. I shook my head in confusion. Tom simply nodded back at me. He accepted his new fate and responsibility. Turning back to the girl, he spoke softly to her. Then I know what I must do. Until the day I die, I will not let go. For the rest of my life, I will hold your hand. The girl smiled, and she hugged Tom. She looked back at us and said, By the way, a lot of people call me the Maerbear, but my real name is Meredith. So there you have it, boys. I haven't seen or spoken to Tom since the trip. We reported Dan's death and told police it was an animal attack, and then he never came back to the camp. Investigators found the scene and they had no doubt it was a bear. They told us we were lucky the bear didn't find us afterwards. But we knew the truth. It was not luck that saved us. It was Tom. He was the strongest Greek boy I have ever met, and apparently he still is. The boys looked back at their grandpa, then to each other, then to the direction of the old couple. They were gone. Must have slipped away in the middle of the story. A few weeks later, Costa got a call. It was an old friend, Paul. He was crying on the other end of the phone. Costa asked what was the matter, and Paul replied, Tom is dead. Costa almost dropped the phone, but stood strong and masked his tone. How did this happen? He asked. Coroner said it was a bad case of food poisoning. His body was in the bathroom and they found several cans of expired chickpeas in the kitchen, answered Paul. And, Costa stammered, what about Meredith? Paul sniffed and cleared his throat before stating, She was gone when the police arrived. The window was broken and there was a set of tracks leading into the forest near her house. Costa tensed up. He knew that forest. It was the same one that bordered his home.
He also remembered that Tom lived nearby, and that the Maerbear had his scent. Then he heard a familiar sound near his window. The bushes were rustling.